Welcome to War Room Impeachment, Episode 5. It's 25 October 2019. It's Friday. This is our fifth episode, running through the week. We're here live every day. We will be here live every day until the day after Donald J. Trump is acquitted in his impeachment. Looks like right now that should be current forecast. We'll talk about that. Current forecast, so it should be December 23rd should be the acquittal vote, and so on Christmas Eve we'll have our wrap-up show. I'm here with Raheem Kassam and Jason Miller. Raheem Kassam ran the War Room and the entire media operation for Nigel Farage in the lead-up to Brexit. He was the managing editor of Breitbart London. As Nigel Farage said, if it was not for Breitbart London, there would not have been a Brexit. It gave a platform to the deplorables of the United Kingdom, and there's so much going on in Brexit right now. Remember, Brexit and 2016 Trump victory are inextricably linked. We've got Jason Miller. Jason Miller's comms director. Has been a comms director for many, many conservative candidates over the year. He was the comms director and our top strategic thinker in the 2016 Trump come-from-behind election and in transition. A lot to get to today. One of the things about War Room, what we're trying to do is just ride to the sound of the guns. We're putting this together, the bailing wire. You can go to our website at warroom.org. Is it?
Warroom.org.
Or it's going to be the centerpiece, and Jason and Raheem, of news every day, analysis every day. It's one-stop shop if you want to find an impeachment. This impeachment process is the only and most important thing that's going on in America right now, with everything else going on, the great economic war with China, USMCA, what's happening in Syria, all the geopolitical. But the Democratic Party has decided in the nullification project, take another bite of the apple, and Nancy Pelosi, the Speaker of the House, is running a master class in political warfare, a master class in political disinformation. We're going to have as our guest later in the day really a strategic thinker. He's a firebrand. He does not get the consideration as a strategic thinker, and as Congressman Matt Gaetz. We had Mark Meadows on yesterday, gave a brilliant assessment of the process. We're going to talk more about that. But just to let you know that this show's having an impact. Other people are having an impact. You're now seeing an inflection point over the last 72 hours. The Trump movement, the Trump base, the Trump supporters on Capitol Hill are throwing down. No more just taking punches. No more just taking incoming. Enough ordnance has been dropped on the Trump movement by Nancy Pelosi's political warfare. And we tip our hat to her. Got a lot of respect for the Speaker of the House. But, once again, she's got a well-oiled machine and lots of money. But Hillary Clinton had a well-oiled machine and lots of money, too. And the kind of bailing wire we had, Jason, in the 2016 campaign, and the bailing wire you put together, Brexit, Raheem Kassam, shows you that a strong leader, strong message, and people who are dedicated to fight. And this is the Fight Club. Remember, we focus on fights that matter, and this fight definitely matters. Okay, we're going to get into it. I want to turn to you guys. A lot has happened. And what I want to say is, you've heard the name Max Rose. What are we talking about Max Rose? If you talk about Max Rose, the key to the House is to make sure there's 0 Republicans. The 18 leaving, none of them can vote for impeachment. The guys like Kinzinger, none of those guys can vote for impeachment. And the 31 House seats that were won by Obama, then won by Trump, and then won in 18 by these Democrats. Max Rose being a perfect example. Staten Island yesterday on Skullduggery, right on the podcast, he says, "Hey, guess what? I think this process has to be open. I think it has to be open now. We have to get everything out." Max Rose is going to feel the heat. He's already feeling the heat. Tulsi Gabbard announces last night on Hannity that she's not going to run for re-election. You know why she's not going to run for re-election? Because she's signaling she ain't going to vote for impeachment. Okay, things are changing. The tide is turning. We have Lindsey Graham in the House. We have so much that's changed. Axios, Jonathan Swan breaks a big scoop last night. Guess what? Inside the White House, the very White House, they're putting together an informal working group to be, and they don't want to call it a war room. That's fine. We've trademarked the name. We got it, guys. We got the war room here. You do it. You got the informal thing, but at least it shows that people are coming together. The legislative group, the political group, and what are they doing? They're focused on the Senate. They're focused on acquittal. And here's what I liked about the Axios story. The subtext is, hey, guess what? They understand he's going to be impeached by Nancy Pelosi on a date certain sometime around Thanksgiving on 2 charges, abuse of power and obstruction of justice. And all we're saying is let's have daylight on this. Let's look. Another big development was a criminal investigation into what I think will be called Crossfire Hurricane, but that's the code name of it, but a political investigation or a criminal investigation now by the Department of Justice. A ton of news breaking overnight, a lot more to talk about today, and we've got Matt Gaetz. I want to turn to Raheem and Jason. Raheem, you want to walk us through quickly what all these things we've talked about? You can see that something's changed here, right? We've seemed to have broken the fever. Now it's a long haul to fight this, but at least people are just not going to be sitting there passively saying witch hunt, fake news, deep state, right? Even if you like those concepts. Now it's say, hey, you want to throw down, Nancy? You want to throw down? Let's throw down.
Yeah, it's absolutely time to stop the rhetoric and start the action, and that's exactly from last weekend to this very day what seems to have been occurring. Now, it may have been occurring at a slower pace even than many of us would have liked. I'm not sure about the informality of a war room. I think that needs to be a formal thing in the White House 3 weeks ago that should have been set up. But it's progress that we're seeing.
It's a start.
There are good names being floated.
Those are solid people. Those are good people.
There are good names being floated to go into the White House
Yes.
now and run a communication strategy
Yes.
and just stuff. Jason and I will talk about that shortly. We're seeing pushback as well, but we're also seeing pushback on the pushback, which is something that people need to pay very, very close attention to. A major scoop that came out of the Dispatch, which is a kind of a Never Trump Republican newsletter that goes out every morning.
That means a newsletter for Human Skull? I'm just
Well, you might
the
say
Never
such a
Trump.
thing.
The
I couldn't possibly comment.
Dispatch is a spinoff of a Never Trump thing, the National Review. So
Right.
you're a spinoff of a spinoff.
Right.
We're going to give them their due. They got a great scoop. Let's talk about the scoop.
They got a
From
great
Jonah Goldberg and the guys at the Dispatch.
That's right, David French and those guys.
David French, didn't he run for president?
Not exactly.
He's
That's
such a
that's,
hater.
That's
He's a
right.
Bannon hater. What a hater.
Former presidential candidate
Former
David
presidential
French.
candidate David French. By the way, David, that is a heckle.
It is a heckle, but they did get a good scoop, and I think it's an important one. It's
Yes.
it's what's called what they're calling the long road to the Senate resolution.
This is
This
important.
is a resolution that's
Big
been
time.
introduced by Lindsey Graham and Mitch McConnell to condemn the process of the Democrats'
It
impeachment.
has no
inquiry.
power over the House, but it's a signaling to say it's a signaling.
But the Dispatch is reporting that originally the resolution contained much firmer language in defense of President Trump, saying he did nothing wrong, the call was a perfect call, all of this stuff. But it basically...
Okay, so they got the scoop from Tom Cotton. Senator Cotton gave him the scoop.
Well, he's the only name...
hey, just saying.
Quote in the story.
Next time, hey, Dispatch, you got to cover it a little better. You got to get a quote from somebody
Well, they're new
else,
to
too.
this, Steve, so, cut up some slack. Look, the resolution was supposed to be much stronger, much firmer. But
Why did they water it down?
What they're saying is Senate Republicans did not feel comfortable defending the president. They did not feel comfortable going into 2020, trying to reach out to independents, trying to reach out to moderates on a full Trump defense strategy. And so the language was watered down by Mitch McConnell to make it just an attack on the process, not a defense of the president.
This is big, and people should understand, even that, only 9 senators did not vote for it. Do we have the wall of shame there? Who was...
Well, yeah, let me dive into Lindsey's press conference
yesterday
and the resolution condemning the House impeachment investigation. So, want to be clear that I'm very glad that Senator Graham went out and did this, but there are some serious red flags that have emerged. Even if it is the watered down version, I'm glad that he did this for a couple of reasons. One, what Senator Graham did was help to continue to message and explain the Democrats' selective leaking. And Senator Graham did a great job of hammering that in his press conference. This is what we've been talking about here all week on War Room Impeachment with Stephen K. Bannon and Raheem Kassam. All week we've been talking about the masterclass from the best communications director on the planet, Speaker Nancy Pelosi. They're leaking selective testimony nuggets in advance of an actual hearing, and then immediately afterwards you have your members talking about it. But so this has been absolutely great that Senator Graham has been hammering this. And the other part that he drove, and I think this is critical, he introduced a new messaging point that I think is going to be important going forward, and that's the issue of fairness. Now, keep in mind, fairness is a central tenet to the election of President Donald J. Trump. When you talk about trade, the reason why people talk about trade is because Trump made it an issue about fairness. So much of the divide between the haves and have-nots. So I'm glad that Lindsey Graham...
Also, what he talks about Ukraine is that where are the Europeans? Where's NATO and the other guys tossing... Throw a few dollars in here, guys. we need some more help, right? It's fair. It's fair to the American people.
Yes.
Fairness is important. And what we say is that's why we're not going to denigrate people here. We want all the information to come out because the American people are very fair. They're going to weigh and measure all this. Fairness is big.
Right, fairness is big, and specifically what Lindsey went and did was he walked through, here are all of the luxuries that were afforded to Bill Clinton back in the 90s, things that are not being allowed to President Trump and the Republicans.
He had that
now.
chart up there, yep.
He had the chart, and this is key because the fairness issue, I think, is a key narrative. I think it's one that we need to add to our mix and push very big because this is one that these independents, that folks are apolitical in nature, can really relate to. Well, wait a minute. You allowed Bill Clinton to do this, but President Trump doesn't even have the same rights that he's being afforded. All of that being said, another part that Lindsey did that was very good is he essentially gave us an informal whip count. And so we don't have to necessarily reply on.
Tell people what that means. What do you mean by that?
So what it means is because this was a resolution condemning the House impeachment effort, and he went around and tried to get everyone to put their name on it. What we got were 46 Republican senators willing to put their name on it. That sounds great, but here's the massive red flag. We have 53. And so when you think about how that shrinking number of potential Republicans that the Democrats need to switch over, that means that they're only 13 away. So so again, 40.
I thought it was 9. I thought 9 didn't vote for
they later on.
Right. Yo, baby.
Yeah.
When he put this thing up, they're afraid of being on the wall of shame on the war room,
And
right?
So he initially announced that there were 44. And as you can imagine, everyone, throwing out the WTF to keep it family friendly here. Why the heck only 44? And then you see Dan Sullivan from Alaska, and you see Rob Portman, Lindsey quickly tweet, "Oh, and this person, and that person." So they clearly
Rob Portman's key.
Rob
Portman
key.
goes, so goes the Senate.
Rob Portman is absolutely critical.
Key.
So that's good.
We will focus on Senator Portman in the coming weeks.
Yes, but again, the concern here is you have 7 Republican senators unwilling
it's not good.
to put their name on it, meaning Democrats are only 13 away or potentially 13 away.
Aren't a couple of those running for,
Yeah.
Who are the ones running for re-election?
So the ones running for re-election in 2020 are Susan Collins from Maine and Cory Gardner from Colorado. So I want to make a very important point here. I want to have Republicans from those states there. But 2020, Steve, as you've correctly been talking about all week, 2020 isn't even happening for Republicans if President Trump gets impeached.
Yeah. This is right now the predicate to 2020. We're in 2020 right now, right?
Yes. And so
we just had a Democratic candidate last night basically say, "I ain't voting for impeachment." Right? So somebody has to vote. A Democratic candidate for president. So we're into this whole effort on impeachment is all inextricably linked to 2020.
Exactly, because if we don't stop this, then there's not going to be a Susan Collins reelection. There's not going to be a Cory Gardner reelection. And so I think their political moves here are going to backfire. So we need to start putting out the pressure on Susan Collins, on Cory Gardner to, hey, guys, your Republican base is going to walk on you if you get wobbly on this.
And this shows you the White House is actually the story in Axios by Jonathan Swan, big scoop, this informal war room they're putting together. Oh, you can't call it a war room. Informal group they have that meets every morning at 10 o'clock. Hey, guys, note to self, 10 o'clock, the day's over. Why don't we start meeting at 7 or 6 or 7 in the Roosevelt room? It's got to get focused over there, 10 o'clock.
I mean,
isn't that lunch?
Yeah.
No. So
don't call it the war room. We'll call it the room.
Yeah, the room, right?
We're not calling it a war room. We're calling it the room.
So clearly the Senate's already an issue. You haven't even had public hearings. The one good thing we saw yesterday, Raheem, is about Max Rose and others are now many Democrats are saying yes. Oh yeah, we have to have public hearings. Now they happen to think that they're just going to run the tables like they run the tables in these depositions. So let's talk about Taylor. Let's go back to some of the there were some big scoops, some buried leads in CNN. CNN had a thing on brother. Is it Morrison? Tim Morrison?
Brother Morrison.
Brother Morrison. Tim, we're going to make you a hero. Brother Morrison still walks into the White House every day. Is Scipione's memo gotten out to anybody that, hey, you're not supposed to cooperate here because we got executive privilege? How's a guy in the National Security Council and head of nuclear security? How is he a witness?
Let's give a little bit of background to who Tim Morrison is just for a couple of seconds, right? This is a guy who is known as the Hawk's Hawk. There's an incredible article on the Daily Beast all about him for people that want to read it.
It's a great article about his. He's been funny. He's leans forward on nuclear weapons.
So the headline is John Bolton brings a nuclear super hawk into the White House, and I especially like the line where it says he's John Bolton without a mustache. Right? It's pretty telling about who Tim Morrison is. And Tim Morrison, according to multiple sources of mine, I've counted 4 so far, is a fully fledged, established, never Trumper.
How does that guy get hired? We'll in the coming days and
into
weeks,
BPO
because I think he testifies.
hiring.
We think he testifies tomorrow. We'll find out. We're going to be live tomorrow, 9 to 10. You listen to War Room Impeachment, Episode 5. Stephen K. Bannon, Raheem Kassan, Jason Miller on the John Fredericks Radio Network. Raheem,
what did I say at the beginning of this week? I said Tim Morrison, Bill Taylor, all these things were going to converge, dovetail, and sure as the turning of the earth.
I love that,
Steve.
Yes.
I don't know where I heard that line, but
write that down.
It's in my head now.
I've trademarked that.
It's happening. And now guess what they're signaling into the news this morning? This morning, Tim Morrison is expected to back Bill Taylor's testimony, blah, 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 blah.
Except his lawyer said, hey, we don't know what you're going to say.
We don't know yet.
That's what I love. You don't know what you're going to say. How about the truth? Right? The lawyer comes and says, we haven't decided what we're going to say yet. I thought it was a deposition. Deposition, I think you had a choice. When they ask you questions, you raise your hand. You got to answer the truth. I love the lawyer. We haven't decided what we're going to say.
Current White House staffer is expected to back up the testimony.
Not just a White House staffer, National Security
Council.
Council.
Very serious senior
guy
person.
down the Situation Room.
And this is the guy where the hearsay all emanates from in Bill Taylor's testimony on page 9. Pull it up, ladies and gentlemen, if you can. Bill Taylor's testimony.
We're deconstructing Taylor's testimony.
He's
Only
the one.
Raheem Kassan's done this.
After Zelensky, after the president of Ukraine, says on July the 20th that he didn't want to be used as a pawn in the U.S. re-election campaign. On July the 25th, the call happens. On July the 26th, Zelensky says the call was fine. And on July...
The president of Ukraine says, hey, call was fine.
And on July,
no pressure, no problem.
On July the 28th, Tim Morrison whispers to Bill Taylor, the call could have been better. And that's where this whole thing hinges.
The president said it's perfect.
That's the whole
president said it was
thing.
Perfect, so what do you mean it could be better?
But that's the whole thing.
I know.
That's
it. We're running this whole process because of perfect versus it could have been better. That's what this is all going to come down to, folks. Could have been better, right? From some guy water cooler talk.
This is where we are at the moment, and that's why Tim Morrison is such an important and intriguing.
This is
figure
why
of
it's
all
so.
of
This is what the show is trying to do. We're trying to highlight these folks before they walk in there, because you're not going to see it on CNN. Is going to give you MSNBC is going to give you their version of it, the political weaponized version of this. We're trying to give you the more of a search for truth version of this, and let Brother Morrison. The other buried lead in that story at the very end of CNN, they go Kupperman. Kupperman is going to just. It was an add-on and a note about the accuracy. They just said we changed some stuff from the original thing on Morrison to be more accurate about his testimony from his lawyer. Oh, by the way, Charles Kupperman is going to testify next week. Charles Kupperman, if you don't know, ladies and gentlemen, and we're going to make Charles Kupperman famous. Charles Kupperman was the acting National Security Advisor after Bolton either left or was fired, depending on whose Twitter account you believe, was either left or either resigned or was fired by the president. Kupperman was his deputy, was a deputy national security advisor. That foreshadows John Bolton.
Jason, is
if
it just me?
If Kupperman's there, Jason, isn't Bolton not far behind? The
is it just
specter
me
of
or
Bolton?
All roads lead to Bolton right now.
Book deal Bolton. That's all I got to say. I mean, I'm just speculating, and obviously Bolton has his own book deal. And so when you talk about Kupperman, I mean, I don't know. I mean, it sounds very anonymous-y of kind of a.
But here's what I don't understand. Once again, Kupperman, where is Pat Cipione the White House counsel? Maybe we ought to send another memo out. Maybe another memo. How about a memo attached to an injunction?
So
right?
here's
why have we talked to legal yet? Why do we have people that are, to me, underneath that the memo he sent to Capitol Hill and to Nancy Pelosi to say that, hey, we're not cooperating. We're going to go take us to court. Let's argue executive privilege. This is an unfair process. It's an illegal process. What's happening right now? I say this breaking news.
Breaking news. I mean, talk about timing. Okay, for those listening live, this is happening in real time.
Okay.
Live update on the CNN live blog on impeachment. John Bolton's lawyers are talking to impeachment inquiry committees, according to a source familiar. That's what's breaking.
It makes sense that you're going to have Taylor. Listen. The other thing, folks, understand. They already know the information they have. They're playing this out episodically, right? And so they know Taylor, and they're going to call Sondland back now. They think they got him in perjury. They're going to think that Sondland's information, Ambassador Sondland's information was not that accurate. But they know every day what they're going to do, right? That's why now you have Morrison, and he's going to hand the baton to Kupperman, and Kupperman's going to hand the baton to Bolton. And listen, John Bolton's a good man. I know John Bolton a long time, but this is going to get the real heat is going to come on this about exactly what's going on. And here's what I don't understand: all these guys worked at the White House. Where's Pat Cipione, and where's some injunctions here on executive privilege? And let's take this up to let's go into court and argue it, right?
Why do you? I mean, I've known Bolton a long time as well, right? We're friendly, but why do you say John Bolton's a good guy? If all roads are leading back to Bolton on this,
I say he's a good man.
Why do you say that?
Well, he's a good man. Look, he may have some information or go in a different direction, but he's been around this movement for a long time.
Is he grinding an axe right now?
Look, I know you guys that hate the neocons, right?
Hold on. Steve,
call the Trump movement.
But I got to push back on that a little bit. This isn't about a neocon thing. I think this is very much about the administration having made it very clear that they don't want current or former members participating in this sham process.
Oh, that's definitely.
They've said that very clear. Don't know why there's not an injunctions, as you've discussed.
That part
they've made that
100%.
clear. So for Bolton to be playing footsies with the committees, that's a slap in the face to President Trump and his legal team who've outlined what they want to see. And again, that's why I said book deal Bolton. Whether or not to the level of his participation, we don't know. But this, to me, looks like a very clear effort to get his name out there and to drive things up.
You think sell a couple books?
People.
How craven can
it gets buried, but you know what?
Is John Bolton signed to the same publicist as the whistleblower?
Not a publicist. No, you signed the same book agent.
Book agent.
The guys at what's it called?
Same guys.
Was it a twofer?
Same guys who did Comey.
And let's talk about this. We're going to go to commercial break in a minute, but I want to be very specific. Anonymous, to talk about how the well-oiled machine is. These are all random events, of course, right? The Anonymous book, which is represented by the same guys over at what's the name of the firm?
Javelin.
Anonymous book is coming out. Guess what? Like the 19th of November, when they're saying that the vote is supposed to be the 21st. They've had a book in process, and today they break the news. I think it was on Axios of how they're going to have direct conversations.
Yes. It's not going to be a cookbook.
No. This is a senior member, and I said I was on the circus. Hallman, was banging my head on the table a year ago, 9 months ago, and the thing came out, and I said, hey. This is a coup, senior guy in a thing. He basically laid out a coup just like McClellan had against Lincoln, right before Antietam. So the Anonymous book, a random drop, right, is going to happen right before this vote's going to take place. And today, Axios gave up the game. It's going to have direct conversations about the president, I think direct conversations in the Oval Office, and it's going to be to show his full character. So they're just going to give everybody a little love tap right before you vote, right? This is what you're voting for, guys. Right, so this is a masterclass in political warfare. This is not a search for truth by the Democrats. A masterclass in political warfare run by Nancy Pelosi. Okay, we'll take a short commercial break. We'll be back with War Room Impeachment. Congressman Gates in a minute.
War Room Impeachment. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Episode 5, 25 October, year of our Lord 2019, live from the Breitbart Embassy on Capitol Hill. We're going to have, hopefully, Congressman Matt Gaetz, the firebrand. In fact, Congressman Gaetz is on. I'm here with Raheem Kassam, Jason Mill. I want you guys to jump in. Congressman Gaetz, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thanks for having me, Steve. Good to be on with you.
Congressman Gaetz is actually from represents the district in Florida that we build the wall. Brian Kolfage and the great patriots down there helping President Trump build the wall. So we're very honored to have you on. Listen, Congressman Gaetz, I want to talk about strategic imperative. What did you do the other day? And why did you do it on this kind of, people calling it a stunt, people calling it political theater, but it completely changed the narrative. What did you do the other day, and why did you do it?
Oh, I organized dozens of my colleagues to ripen at a far higher level in this country the issues of transparency and fairness and due process, where President Trump has good arguments. I mean, there is no good reason why President Trump is being afforded less due process than Republicans afforded President Clinton. But I think if you zoom out, you see a very significant shift in how the Democrats are approaching this on the Ukraine than how they did on Russia. The organizing principle for the Democratic efforts on Russia was to get as much information out as possible. They had been so triggered by Donald Trump's election, they fundamentally believed if they just got information out, that the public would turn on our transformational America First president. And that didn't happen. And so now you see the exact opposite. Instead of putting stuff out, they're trying to draw all the information in. I mean, literally, they're holding non-classified hearings in a classified facility. They're doing that to try to create the imprimatur that what they're doing is really important because it's secret. But the reality is they just have to keep it secret because public's exposure to these facts would demonstrate that there is not impeachable conduct. So my effort was to try to highlight that shift, to show that these are people who don't fundamentally believe in their evidence because they're hiding it, and also show that some of the president's most strident defenders, myself, Congressman Andy Biggs, we've been dealt out of the hand. They've tried to reposition the legislative deck for this impeachment process because when the House Judiciary Committee was the forum for this debate and discussion, I thought we worked them pretty silly, Steve.
Yeah, it was amazing, and Jason, I want you guys to jump in. One last thing on this part. Explain to the audience, one of the things we're trying to do in the war room is take down the rhetoric and really give people facts. What is this skiff? Why is this Star Chamber being held in the basement of the Capitol? I mean, what's the whole reason it's down there, and what's it like? And you've got access to that. You're a sitting congressman with a security clearance.
Sure.
Why are they having the Star Chamber down in a hidden part of the basement?
So all throughout the Capitol, there are secure, compartmentalized information facilities where we can speak about issues of high classification. Some are in the basement, some aren't. The intelligence community is the custodian of one of the larger secure, compartmentalized facilities, and it's down in the basement. It's traditionally used so that you can get updated briefings on operations that are going on in challenging parts of the world to collect intelligence and analyze intelligence. Every other time I've been in that room, I've been getting a briefing from the intelligence community, oftentimes about active operations that are ongoing. So it is sensitive and important and part of our national security apparatus. I am unaware of any circumstance where a non-classified process has been brought into one of those rooms. I've never seen it before, and I'm on the Armed Services Committee where we do a lot of this work. So Adam Schiff is doing this because it facilitates the dynamic of exclusion. You know, if you just had a committee room or if you just had a place where members and staff could come in and out, it would be easier for us to try to figure out what the hell's going on. And so I think they're doing it to facilitate this total 180 in their strategy. But I got to tell you, Steve, there are elements of their strategy that make sense given some of the left's natural advantages. They have what we don't in the mainstream media. And so when they have secret hearings, they can selectively leak, and then the media goes out and says, well, this is the truth. This is what happened. The reality is we don't have the opportunity for our cross-examination, for our checks against those witnesses' statements, against timelines, against other statements, to be part of the national discussion. And it's why I think they're choosing to go this way.
When you go, well, by the way, it's a perfect description. One of the things we've been talking about Nancy Pelosi's political disinformation warfare campaign. And look, you got to tip your hat. They're running a great campaign until you got engaged like you did the other day. I keep telling people what you did was to break the fever. There's a lot of work to do, but now you see Trump people. You see that they got a little war room over at the White House. What we're doing, what you're doing, Mark, your people are fighting back. When you went down there, was Congressman Schiff, was there some sort of confrontation? I take it he was not happy about this?
No, I mean, you know, when we walked in the room, he grabbed the witness. I mean, almost, darn near put a burlap sack over her head and, carried her out of the room. Took her out of the room. It was almost like watching cockroaches scatter when you turn the lights on. And so he immediately departed with the witness, in making it very clear to us that if the choice was to proceed on schedule with a little more transparency or just not proceed, there was no way he was leaning into the transparency. That was his objective in that move. I got to tell you, Steve, at kind of a broader level, you mentioned how there's starting to be a more intense focus on this. I do not agree with the comments of my friend Mick Mulvaney when he says that when you prepare a war room, that is some sort of indication of guilt. Look, I represented a lot of innocent clients in the practice of law, and I was never afraid to over-prepare to make sure that we had all of our ducks in a row. And the other thing we've got to do for the Trump movement, we've got to bring back the killer class. You know, the Steve Bannons, the Jason Millers, the Corey Lewandowski. We are not going to win. I know you're all a little weird. Y'all got a little bumps and bruises. I am too. Right? But like, we need the killers. Okay, we are not going to win this impeachment at a K Street martini party. We are going to win it by igniting the energy in the American people to see transformational change in this country that President Trump has brought, and we've got to show them the crap he's getting for it. And that's just going to take a different level of fight than the normal, operation of an administration.
You see, what people don't appreciate about you, because the mainstream media trusts it, is that you're both a firebrand, a street fighter, and a strategist all at one time. And in this strategic move you made this week, the Bigfooted Taylor's second day of the Taylor firestorm, Bigfooted Cooper. You're also a very smart lawyer. Let me ask you, I don't understand why Cooper's there. Help us. In the war room here, we saw Scipione's letter. And to me, that looked like no cooperation, no information. We're going to executive privilege. We're going to fight. This is a unfair process, an illegal process, and now the box process. We're going to fight this through the court system all the way up to the Supreme Court. How does Cooper show up? How does Kupperman show up next week? How does Morrison still in the White House on this?
I mean, like here's the problem, right, Steve? Whenever some news organization is going to write a profile about you, they call your friends and your enemies, right? And your enemies, they're dying to say why they don't like Steve Bannon. But your friends oftentimes will text you and be like, "Don't worry, Steve, I didn't talk to that reporter." And then, the only thing that's reflected are the people that were dying to talk crap about you. And so what you see now is that, people who I think are just trying to do their job, be a public servant, stay out of Adam Schiff's circus, they are taking the advice of the administration and not showing. The people that are showing up are people that, have a story to tell. And oftentimes, what I'm hearing from my colleagues is that strategy that the Democrats used in Russia and the deep state really, to leak information anonymously and then to go assert an allegation and then to cite what they anonymously leaked to someone in the media. We're starting to see more and more in these depositions that people are showing up and saying, well, do I have firsthand knowledge of any quid pro quo or any withholding? I don't, but I was aware of it because I read it in some Politico story. I read about it. And of course, it's elements of the deep state, of the anti-Trump, movement in both parties that go out and leak false information, and then they try to go and reference that back to validate their false allegations.
Exactly. In Speaker Gates, this is Jason Miller, and look, to be accurate, future Speaker Gates, and so I don't want
to... Are you auditioning here, Jason?
No, but I think you bring up something that's very important with the media framing, and when you took a look at the CNN story that was popped last night, the very early, selective, edited story, where the headline was White House official expected to back up diplomat's testimony, and then it goes on to hammer the president. But this is so great. But buried in the story, it says Morrison's attorney says they don't know what he'll say yet. But literally the headline of the story is, here's how he's going to go and crap all over the president. But there's, Congressman, there's a very important thing I want to drill down on for a moment. And the point that you raised, and we were also discussing some of this in the previous block, were the unfairness of this entire sham process impeachment circus, and the fact that President Trump isn't being given any of the basic rights or abilities that were given to President Clinton 20 years ago. So as we dive into the defined scope of inquiry, allowing members to see evidence, allowing the President's counsel to attend, all of these things that the Democrats gave to Clinton, but they're not being given to, or Republicans gave to Clinton, but Democrats aren't giving to President Trump. Realizing that we're in the minority right now, can you drill down on, starting with your efforts this week, what can we do to change some of the actual process, realizing that we're in the minority, and what structural things we might be able to do to force our way in and try to make this a bit more fair.
Well, look, I mean, as you guys know, being in the minority is worth a little more than a warm bucket of spit in the House of Representatives. We have no subpoena power. Adam Schiff initially tried to bar our members from even asking questions, saying that only our staff could ask questions.
Wow.
You can imagine with Jim Jordan in the room, that didn't last 12 seconds. Jim just started asking questions. But the point you make is that we have very few tools. Right? When all of this was in the open, we had more clubs in the bag. Right now, we have limited clubs. And frankly, Jason, the thing that we have to use more effectively is the microphone, which is why I tried to marshal my colleagues and to try to create a moment to occupy the media bandwidth. Like, what I think all of you understand, what I think certainly Raheem understands, is that there's only so much bandwidth in the media cycle. And so when we just sort of wait around for the next leak to have to try to explain with some convoluted cross-examination, instead we should be doing proactive things to make our substantive and procedural arguments, and we should just go and do those and try to do them at a high volume, and they've got to be interesting. I mean, look, Meghan McCain takes a shot at me the other day. Oh, Matt Gaetz wants to be a TV star, not a congressman. Well, frankly, at least one of us should be a TV star. She's on the View.
Oh, ba-boom!
I think that what she sort of ignores there is that if you don't do things that captivate people's attention, it's the tree that falls in the forest that nobody hears. And meanwhile, the mainstream media is out there amplifying the lies that are baked into these opening statements that are not subject to the review that would normally develop in fact-finding.
Look,
we got to use the microphone.
Here's one thing I don't get. The same warriors we saw on Russia is the same warriors we're seeing now. Congressman
Not
Matt
really,
Gaetz.
because a few of us are dealt out, Steve. I am dealt out of the factual development. Andy Biggs is dealt out of the factual development. So we got a few of our folks in, but they cleaved off a good part of our team. And just one more point, because I think it facilitates what you're about to say. Because we've got, Jim Jordan, Mark Meadows, John Radcliffe, a few of those good people in there, Schiff just this last week has started scheduling depositions on the same day at the same time.
Two at a time. Break them up.
Yep. Yeah, so we only have one Jim Jordan, and so we can't send him to two rooms at once. So anyhow, go ahead. It's
absolutely important that they're doing two-a-days now, or two at a time, to separate Meadows and Jordan. Why are there not more people? Why are there not more Republicans coming to your banner right now to fight this? I saw you had 30 or 35 or 40. I don't think I saw McCarthy there, and I'm not trying to disparage the minority leader, but why are there not more people that are having Matt Gaetz's back when Gaetz is out there understanding how media works, understand how this is not a search for truth. This is political warfare 101, and Nancy Pelosi is teaching the Republicans right now a master class. Why are there not more people like you with guts and spine and brains fighting back?
People in Congress don't like to be criticized. Most of them don't. Like, if you go do a search of me on social media right now or on an internet search engine, you'll probably find more negative stories than positive ones, right? But I mean, to me, I don't view that as a weak sign of weakness. I wear it as a badge of honor. I'm happy to be known by who my enemies are. And if folks are shooting at us, that probably means we're over the target. But I think most of my colleagues, and frankly most human beings, aren't willing to sort of bask in criticism. And so there aren't people. I think that most folks just, they're willing to maybe make a statement on the floor, put out a press release, but anything that would result in a negative op-ed from your hometown paper, that would be like something that would require a lot of my colleagues to really have some soul searching.
I know you're not going to flip your face cards over, but can you give people directionally? So we have a big audience here, particularly the grassroots movement. People are looking for leadership. Where can people expect to see Matt Gaetz over the next couple of weeks? Where is the driving, organizing principle of your resistance to this?
Well, I think that we have got to force this thing open. We are not going to win a fight that is behind closed doors with selective leaks and mainstream media amplification. It's not one we can win. So the only way to turn the tables is to start, getting people out in the country engaged. I remember, Steve, when, you were in the White House, you were constantly trying to get the president outside of Washington and into parts of the country to ignite people. So I may be showing up outside the offices of some of my colleagues, rallying great Americans to make sure that people in Congress know that we're watching and that we are not going to allow the duly elected President of the United States to be railroaded through a sham process while we just watch idly by and the left fight like a pack of hyenas.
Congressman, I know you got to jump. How can people find out more about you? You know, what's your Twitter handle, social media? How can people,
Sure.
listen to this, want to see know more about Matt Gaetz? How do they do that?
They can sign up on my website at mattgaetz.com. We send out weekly updates that give a lot of the details of what's going on. You can also find me on Twitter at Matt Gaetz, MattGaetz. But don't get your feelings sometimes. I'm just open Gates. I let it go.
The future Speaker of the House, Congressman Matt Gaetz from Florida. Thank you.
Don't say that. I thought y'all had
Thank you very much, sir. Appreciate it.
Take it easy.
This is what we've needed. Yeah. Right? Yeah. This is what we needed.
Finally.
Listen, when President Trump won, when this whole process started, the Associated Press called him the President-elect of the United States at 2:30 a.m. on the 9th of November, 2019. And Brother John Fredericks ran the John Fredericks Radio Network. Brother John Fredericks was the lone person up on Radio Row in the on the 14th floor in the war room of the Trump campaign. One person. The resistance, the nullification project started 1 minute later. Remember, he had 10,000 people down outside of Trump Tower. They never left. They had the conch shells cutting their heads, crying, screaming. It was the worst thing. It started. And what I said at that time, I went to CPAC with Ryan, said, don't think because you won one election, they're just going to pat you on the head and toss you the keys and say, what a great idea. What a great idea. Donald Trump and the deplorables and this kind of ragtag group, this bailing wire, just won the presidency. Just don't think they're going to sit there and go, that's fantastic, pat you on the head, great job, here are the keys, you do what you say you're going to do, go ahead and do it. No. It's from day one, and here's what we need. You need guys like Gates. You need guys like Meadows. You need guys like Jordan. Fighters. People that are absolutely honey badgers, that do not care what the mainstream media says. Do not care at the cocktail parties in Georgetown. They're laughing at you. Do not care that you're not invited to all the nice think tanks around town. None of that stuff matters. None of that stuff will ever be remembered, right? It's all the same stuff that's gone on in this city decade after decade after decade, and that's how America got in this situation.
And I think when the history books come back and look at what really turned around this impeachment effort, I think they're going to look to this week. They're going to see where finally President Trump's allies started getting out there, leading this aggressive
Had a belly
effort,
full of it.
Had a belly full of it. And they're going to look to folks like Congressman Matt Gaetz from Florida and what they were able to do this week to elevate the issue of the unfairness that's happening with President Trump, the sham process that Adam Schiff and Speaker Pelosi are running. And they're going to say efforts like that and war room impeachment and other folks are making their voices heard. This is what is starting to turn it around.
You know, I used to get invited to a lot of Georgetown cocktail parties. Then I started working for Stephen K. Bannon. The whole thing just dried up overnight. You know,
yeah, I'm sure working for Farage got your letter.
Listen, I want to bring something up real quick, Steve.
Yeah.
This is going to be hearings on Saturday.
Yes,
now,
we're
right?
live. By the way, we're live tomorrow, 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. every day of the week, from the time we started all the way to the day after Donald J. Trump is acquitted in the impeachment trial that's going to occur.
But something really interesting that
and we'll be
out,
live Saturday and Sunday, 9 on the John Fredericks Radio Network. Yes, sir.
Something really interesting that stuck out to me was this letter that came from Jim Jordan and signed by Devin Nunes and a whole bunch of others, basically about Phil Rieker, this guy who's going to testify. And
is Rieker supposed to testify tomorrow?
Yeah.
Okay,
and
so we'll be prepping his.
We can get onto Rieker and everything tomorrow.
Tomorrow morning,
we'll actually be talking about it before he goes in to testify. But importantly, Jim Jordan sends this letter and says, you know, would you move the testimony to a business day to allow for greater member attendance? And this is exactly what you're saying. We have those firebrands, we have the Gates, we have the Meadows, we have those people. But who is saying, I'm not coming on a Saturday? Who in the Republican team is saying, I can't make it?
Yeah.
And if that's the case, this is a major, major problem that we have, right?
This is huge. We're going to be live tomorrow. Raheem, Jason, myself here from the Breitbart Embassy on War Room impeachment. Jason, why do you think that this week is an inflection point? Look, there's a long fight ahead, but now at least you have some engagement. Why was this week so important?
Because Trump allies have really started to punch back and make their voices heard. And they're coming up with creative ideas to do it, to force the issue. We're seeing much more media focus to the fact that Trump allies are starting to push back and starting to do this. And prior to that, we weren't seeing any of this. There were no pushback voices. The Democrats were running roughshod over us. And don't get me wrong, just as you said, just as Congressman Gates said, the Democrats have the majority in the we have limited ability to push back. We have to use the microphone.
I was not kidding about the Speaker Gates when you said it. Here's why. McCarthy goes on, and McCarthy's a nice guy, but he goes on 60 Minutes with Nancy Pelosi, hasn't even read the transcript. Looks like a complete and total buffoon. Okay? He's got to jump in here and get engaged. You see Gates comes over the thing. We got 30 seconds.
When you get outside the Beltway and you talk to Republicans and you talk to Trump supporters, what you hear is Matt Gaetz. That is what you hear outside of the Beltway.
Amen.
That is real America.
And the reason the left hates him, Gates, they try to make Gates as some sort of wild man, it's just stunts. He's actually a strategic thinker and a brilliant young man. Okay, we're going to jump. We got tomorrow 9 to 10. You got to go to warroom.org. We're going to have now a newsroom up there, constant things. It's your one-stop shop for everything War Room. Want to thank Jim Hoft and the guys at Gateway Pundit. All the sites are picking us up. We'll go through a whole thing tomorrow about who's picking us up. John Frederick Radio Network. This is War Room Impeachment. We will see you tomorrow at 9 a.m. live.